Anders Wijkman, it's a great pleasure to have you on, and thank you for your willingness to participate in the Club of Rome Rethinking Finance Hub, the purpose of which is to take a high-level approach, a transdisciplinarity approach toward changing financing change, in order to capture various ideas and break down the silos between various disciplines. And so let's dive right into it.
Yeah.
And I would like to start with the first question as to what your opinion is, how to start the economy after COVID-19. And of course, the purpose is centered around finance. So we know, just to preface this and set the stage, we know that COVID-19 is showing us that we have not changed the systems the way we should have and where we could have after the financial crisis of 2005, where we started printing money in order to address the issues at time without changing the system. Basically, what we did is printing money, provide more liquidity to a bankrupt system without changing it. And now we find ourselves in the same trap, and we have a different opportunity right now. So, and this is the purpose of this entire consultation. What is your opinion as to how to get going again, based on the lessons that we are learning and we could learn?
Well, I don't have a background in the financial sector, but let me give you a few comments. One is, I think we have to look beyond the financial sector. We have to look at the macroeconomics picture and how the economy is organized, the cost structure of the economy, the fact that it's very cheap, often it costs nothing to make use of nature and to pollute. And if you look at our taxation system, it's very, very skewed. Only about 5% of taxes and fees are related to environment, energy, and pollution, and resource use. The rest is on income, VAT, etc. So the cost structure is flawed, and that of course affects how people invest their money. And you referred to the easy money that was the result of the financial crisis. Well, it has of course contributed to a further destruction of many vital ecosystems, and most of those investments are increasing debts. So we have a rather touchy situation there. Part of the money has gone into assets, leading to an inflation in asset prices, and very little has gone to ordinary people. So we also have inequalities building up. So I think that there are so many issues that is not only a question for the financial sector, but really a question for economics and to rethink economics. The discounting of the future that we are entertaining, etc., etc. So I think we need to rethink economics. And if we don't do that, we may, in parts of the economy, do the right kind of things. I mean, for instance, start investing more in renewable technology, fine. But if we want the economy as a whole to start moving in the right direction, I believe we have to look at macroeconomics and the overriding policy frameworks.
I couldn't agree more. And you are an expert in circular economy. There are various models, whether we call them donut economy or circular or blue economy. Can you give us a few hints, like what are the top 5 priorities that we should address? Also from the policy perspective, from the legal perspective, and how are we going to reinforce the laws that are not there yet? And then, of course, this is a bigger conversation, which has to do with the mindset and the mind shift that we need to occur. So please give us your thinking around
Well, this. I mean, if we have to rethink economics, we also have to rethink education and the organization of science. I mean, I can go back to the Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th century, which was, of course, a huge step in the right direction where you put knowledge at the center. But we have a legacy of a very reductionistic way of creating knowledge. And the scientific community is organized in silos. There are, I don't know how many thousand disciplines and subdisciplines, but tell me how many programs are there to look at the whole and to integrate knowledge from different sectors. And what you referred to, namely mindset or mind shift, I think we have, look at climate change, for instance, we should have brought in behavioral scientists at the beginning. I don't think those who deal with climate from the natural science point of view have much to say how you communicate this to people. That's something for the behavioral scientists, and they have not been involved. So we have this silo-based educational system. That's one of the problems. And economists are the worst because they learn absolutely nothing about how the planet works. So they put an economic and technological system on top of nature. And it worked pretty well as long as we were relatively few people and the economy was not so large. But now we have had a more than 10 times larger economy over the last 50 years. And the population has gone from 3 billion to almost 8 billion. No wonder we have problems. So we must understand how nature works. That must be the starting point. And that's why I'm very attracted by this notion of regenerative development or a regenerative economy, where you really try to understand how nature works and then work with nature, not against nature. And then a third comment, particularly with regard to circularity, is that we have built a production system based on linear models. So we take raw materials from the earth, we make them into something, a product, and then we throw them away. Very short, we don't extend product life. We have a very short product life for most of the products. And the irony is, and I've been working in the recycling industry, so I know this from experience, the irony is that very often secondary materials, they are more expensive than virgin materials. So no wonder that companies continue to do the linear model, because it's easier for them and it's cheaper. And for most people, I know, the wallet decides. So we need to, again, it's a question of cost structure. You must incentivize circularity in the right way. And you can do it by taxes and fees and rebates. For instance, if you took away VAT on reused materials, that would give a great boost to the secondary materials market. And it would give a great boost to repair and maintenance, etc. Another thing is, of course, to put in place some kind of design requirements. Now you can put any kind of product on the European market. And we know that most of the design is such that you cannot really reuse the materials because it's very difficult to dismantle. Look at this laptop, for instance, or my mobile phone. It's almost impossible to dismantle. And that's why they only retrieve or capture gold and copper. The rest is lost. So there's so much waste in this economy, both from an economic point of view and a waste and an environment and climate point of view. Carbon emissions are very much related to the use of materials, not only to energy. So here we have a few entry points that are relatively easy. But the problem is that economists don't look at it this way.
Yes, and that of course has an implication or an impact on the way the financial system works. Exactly. Yeah. And which is the core of what we're trying to do here. Now, you are a politician and
I was.
You were. Yeah.
I left politics.
I understand. But you do know politics, you know more than I do as a serial entrepreneur and turned investor, on what are the key points on how we can bring this thinking into the political area that are basically determining how our economics and financial system and production and businesses and so on work. So And we all know that governments are the last to transform, to change. And yet we are at a fault line right now, where that must happen, and quick. So how can we have an impact? We have an opportunity right now. People are motivated more than ever, as far as I could tell. How can we get that, particularly from the EU Commission point of view, from the Green Deal perspective? So
You know, I wouldn't single out politicians as being the worst laggards, because there are individuals within each and every political party that are really trying hard.
I didn't say that. I said it's the slowest to change.
And of course, I think part of the challenge is this globalized economy with very little systems of governance in place, and you are pretty limited as a government from what you can do on your own. That's why the European Union, by the way, is so important, because it's a big enough market that you can decide and then have an impact on the rest of the world. So the European Union is of course very, very crucial. The problem is that the economy is very short term, you know, quarterly results from companies, and everything is geared towards dividends in the short term. And high return on investments. It's a crazy system, in my opinion, because how can you make that compatible with long-term, sound, sustainability-oriented investments? There's no way you can do that. So that is a real problem. And then the political system in itself is very short-term. In the US, you have elections every second year. In most European countries, every fourth year. So the government's sort of time horizon is most often not more than 4 years. So I think we have to look at this tension between the short-termism and long-termism, and try to insert into the system, or to introduce into the system, some kind of mechanism which forces them to be more long-term. I mean, one idea that my friend Jürgen Randers has raised is to put in place a secondary chamber in each parliament, which is elected for 10 years and which have the long-term perspective at the core of its mandate. I know that some countries, Hungary was one of them, but it's not a good example any longer, that put in place an ombudsman for the future. I think Israel has the same. I don't think Israel is a very good example either. But I mean, you have to look at governance very, very carefully. And then if I had some power, I would invite the leaders of political parties. I would start in Europe, perhaps, to a 2 or 3 day seminar. I would lock them in somewhere in a nice place and walk them through all the challenges and show the interlinkages. I mean, in the Club of Rome, we have launched first a climate emergency action plan, then a planetary emergency action plan, and we have, I think, demonstrated that climate change and biodiversity loss are very much interlinked. You cannot solve one issue at a time. You have to look at the system, and the political system is not organized like that. You have a lot of infighting between different ministries. You have a lot of infighting in parliaments between different committees. I've seen it. I've experienced it. In the European Parliament, there was always a fight between the Committee for Industry and Research and the Committee for Environment and Health. There was always a clash. Who should take the lead on issues? And so you need a more horizontal way of decision making. So I mean, these are tricky issues, and you won't put them in place right now. But I would hope that the new European Commission, which had a good start with its proclamation of the Green Deal, and I think that paper, you can look it up, 17 December on the Commission website, it contains all the necessary thing, and it really points at the interlinkages, and that you cannot solve one issue at a time. You have to have a systems perspective. So yeah, those are my responses. It's complex, and we live in a complex world. So it's a question of managing or at least living with complexity and accept complexity. By the way, I was in a conference, I wrote a book together with Ernst von Weizsäcker a few years ago, where you participated also and gave your contribution, called Come On, and we had a translation into Polish. And I was in Warsaw to introduce that version. And the scientific advisor of the president of Poland was in the room. And after my introduction, he said, complexity is too difficult for ordinary people. They will never understand it. So we have to make the world less complex. And I sort of looked at it and I said, okay, I said, good luck. Well, he said, we have to stop all these exponential technologies. Yeah, we have to stop them. And I said, okay, have you ever seen in history somebody stopping a development like that? Can you stop knowledge creation? Can you stop technology development? You can hopefully steer it in a positive direction, but to stop it, to put a lid on it, I think is not possible. But that was his feeling. And I think by and large, that's what guiding that government.
Yep, I know. And that's exactly the driving force for my completing the integral investing book. Yeah. That I submitted to the Club of Rome, because, coming bottom up as an entrepreneur and an AI person and a great believer in the great opportunity that exponential technologies are providing for us to address these issues, particularly starting with the existential threats. If we get involved, if we open up to the possibility that we could still, as human beings, begin to comprehend exponential thinking and move away from the linear thinking. Because those who have these arguments, stop the exponential complexity, make it simple, they ain't seen nothing yet. The technological complexity is growing, and as COVID-19 is showing us, this is an exponential threat. Pandemic, they grow exponentially. So how do you see the role of the Club of Rome within this integrative thinking? Because we do, in the Club of Rome, we do have the experts, the people who can embrace and are embracing complexity and provide a more simple way of understanding what is at stake. How can we find a segue toward those who are actually providing the laws and making the decisions for the various forms of economics that are currently not working, so that can shift and become more integrative, so that we can include the externalities?
Well, I mean, we are a think tank. We are a network of some 100 individuals. By the way, I think we should have more people from the behavioral science side, because that has been lacking. And I think we have been doing a fair job when it comes to trying to show the collision between the sort of human economy or the economic system on one hand and the natural systems, and that we cannot continue to have this low respect for the natural system and this very mechanistic approach. But I think, and we have also demonstrated that we need other indicators, how to measure welfare and well-being, and maybe happiness. But we have neglected, I think, the role that education and science and the organization of science plays. We had a beautiful report many years ago called No Limits to Learning, which addressed these issues. And I think we have to revisit that. Then I think one of the problems with a think tank like this and a network like this is that there are a lot of very strong individuals, all of them pursuing their own research, their own work, their own ideas, concepts, etc. And I would have liked to see some of us playing more of a catalytic role so that we can bring this together. And I come to think about it recently when my very close friend and a longtime member of the club, Manfred Max Neff, passed away. Manfred was a towering individual, a very, very, very interesting personality. And he had a different approach to economics. His Human Scale Economics is one of the best books I've ever read. And he never really got the recognition he should have had in society. And part of the problem was that the Club of Rome didn't really back him up. We could have done that. We could have decided this year and the next year, we're going to push Manfred's ideas to the front. We didn't do that. We listened to him, we applauded him, and we said, fine. And then he went back home to Chile and continued to work. But so I think we need to give more reflection to priorities and to work better together and crystallize some of the important priorities and then bring them to the fore.
Which of course is the intent of this initiative, this transdisciplinary, which is what I'm trying to do here, yeah. Approach where we go beyond the 3 or 5 minutes listening to whatever the best ideas are that people have and provide an hour and longer framework where people can really dig deeper into their ideas and where we don't have this time pressure to stay on the surface but dig deeper. Yeah. And because I think
today we are guided by Twitter, huh? 280 characters, that's it.
Yeah, and this is exactly the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you, and that's one of the problems also in the media. There are very few journals today where you can write longer pieces than maybe 5,000 characters or 6,000 characters. And some of these issues you need maybe 25 or at least 20,000 characters to sort of explain. And of course you can write a book, but how many people read your book? We need other ways of communication. So I agree with you.
Yeah, not only other ways of communications, of course, but also, as you mentioned several times during this interview, this transdisciplinarity approach where you bring people from various walks of life, not only economists or financial people or scientists or from technology, but also behavior. I'm a computer scientist and AI major, and my PhD is in psychology. Because of that. So behavioral science is extremely important. Behavioral finance is extremely important. And you spoke also about including happiness as a measurement factor in helping us move beyond GDP as the for-profit only metrics that we're currently using. So from your point of view, let's see, who are the organizations that we should team up with that could help us? Because one of the things that we had in the past also is this, the silo. We talked about the silo, the separation. Who are the partners that the Club of Rome should partner up with, where we join forces so that we can reach that tipping point? Because we all see that it's needed. First question, partner up with whom? And the other is, from the financial perspective, who do you think are the organizations that understand, that have the same gravitation, center of gravity that we do, that we should be talking to as well?
Well, that were two difficult questions. I think we have developed very good relations with some of the leading scientists in the natural science field, like the Potsdam Institute, for instance, like Bob Costanza's group in Australia, and some institutes in the UK and in the US, the Stockholm Resilience Center, etc. So there we have established very good contacts and working relationships, and I think our new co-president Sandrine Dixon de Cleve, she's done masterfully when it comes to leading this process and having a lot of organizations and institutions joining us in this planetary emergency action plan. So that's very good. But on the other on other scientific fields or knowledge fields, I think our contacts are less well developed. I think one of our members when it comes to finance is John Fullerton in New York, the Capital Institute that he is running. I think that his thinking is very profound, and he brings to the fore a lot of the right solutions when it comes specifically to the financial system and the financial sector, how money is created, that you cannot be a risk taker with other people's money. You have to have a certain portion of your own money. So that's the capital ratio. And then, of course, what is the money invested in? Are we investing in the sound things, or are we investing in the risky things? And how do you disclose or share the risks you have as an investor with society? So there are many issues there that we need to take on board and we need to understand better. Then, of course, we have to send out or approach some of the conventional or established institutions. I mean, IMF has now a new chair, Kristalina Georgieva. I happen to know her since many years. She's a very fine person. I mean, I think we can influence her. And of course, our contacts with the European Union, the European Commission are very, very crucial, because if we can influence policymaking there, that will have an impact in Europe and in the world. So I think it's both reaching out to, in the short term, the established institutions, those who have the power, and in the longer term, we need to build good relationships with unconventional thinkers. But I'm not in the behavioral science field. I know too little to know whom to reach out to. You know better.
Thank you. Well, but you are a complex thinker, and that's why you're very important in this conversation, particularly because you see the correlations and how various silos interact with one another, having been in this field for so long. So it is extremely important that your ideas come to the forefront. As you know, as I mentioned again, I believe in the importance of getting entrepreneurs involved. And from your perspective, because I believe entrepreneurs do provide, particularly young people, they are already there where we want to go, but they don't have the power to have an impact. On one hand, they're young people, they don't have assets, they don't have the saying, but they do have the brilliant ideas and the mindset, which is very encouraging to me, because I'm supporting a vast amount, number of women in their economic empowerment. So from your perspective, how do you see the role that entrepreneurship plays in this entire field? Do you see a bottom-up approach to transformation coming from this field? From where you stand, what is your opinion on that?
I think it has to. The development that we are striving for will have to come both from top down and bottom up. We don't have time to wait for bottom up, and I think if we wait for bottom up without some clever leadership at the top, I think there will be a rather nasty process, because there is so much going on at the bottom. So many people are deprived of the most essential things in life. And by the way, I think this crisis has shown us that what we label now as essential services in society have been underpaid and understaffed. And instead, we pay handsome money to people in the financial sector who basically are spending their life in speculation. And of course, there are good bankers as well, but I think there's some absolute, almost obscenities in the system. So many people suffering, and then a little group not even 1%, maybe 0.5%, live in another world. So, and unless we transform that step by step, and instead let it be a bottom-up process, I think it's going to be almost a revolution. Look at the US today. Look at the US today. I mean, I think it's scary. People with machine guns out in the street protesting the lockdown, etc. I mean, it seems to be a boiling pot almost. So I think we need both. Entrepreneurs are very important. I'm actively involved in something called Climate Kick. Kick stands for Knowledge and Innovation Communities, and we are set up by the European Union to try to promote low carbon solutions and the move into a low carbon society. And many of our partners are young entrepreneurs and startups, and that's where we find some of the brightest people and some of the best ideas. And I agree with you. What's often lacking is resources so that they can scale up and do something useful. So, and I don't have a recipe for how that should happen, but governments could, of course, increase their the money that they make available for startups and entrepreneurship, young entrepreneurs. That type of funding is still very, very limited. And you know, one thing I've reflected a lot about in this crisis is that when we ask now, how do we get out of the crisis? We have a tendency to go to the incumbents, the leading companies in each and every sector, and we ask them for advice. And I mean, I'm not saying that some of their advice is bad, but it's only part of the picture, because they are interested in forwarding their own business interests, their existing business models, the way they meet our needs and demands today, and the technologies that are played today. You do not necessarily think out of the box if you are in that kind of a position, but you need to think out of the box. Many of the needs we have in society can be met in other ways, and we can see that in some areas it's already happening. I mean, we use video conferencing much more than physical meetings, and I think that will stay. That will stay. We will not meet physically in the same way in the future. Distance work is increasing. A lot of e-commerce is increasing. So that is already happening. But we have to think out of the box and listen to those young entrepreneurs and innovators, because they often provide the solutions, but they are not necessarily part of the incumbents.
Yes, you mentioned that the government should provide more funding for young entrepreneurs, which make up, or small and medium enterprises in a broader sense, which make up between 60 and 80% of the GDP in every nation across the world. One of the problems with the current models, and I've raised this issue on numerous occasions within Club of Rome meetings, is that the money that is being made available goes through the banks. Mm-hmm. Of course, and asking them to distribute it to those who are building companies. The problem with that banks, the way this trickle down system doesn't really work, because the money doesn't reach those that entrepreneurs that mm-hmm. need it, because the banks have different requirements to providing risk capital to enterprises, to smart young entrepreneurs. So we need to change.
I've been struggling with the solar energy company for a decade.
Yeah.
And finally we went bankrupt.
Exactly. That's what's happening. And I witness that on a regular basis. And mm-hmm. My family office has put all of our money, to really change the system, but we're limited, so we need support in this. And that begins with the mind shift. So some other models need to come to the forefront right now. We have a great opportunity right now to change that doesn't work. Which is
it's not only the money that goes via the banks. I mean, look at the EU research budget. It's something like 100 billion euros over a 6 to 7 year period. So it's a lot of money. 15 to 20 billion euros every year is being distributed. It's very difficult for a small company or a small startup to have access, because you need to put in your own money. You need to put in maybe 50%. And you need to have some, performance indicators that show that you are credible and that you have achieved results in the past, etc. So the whole system is geared towards, again, incumbents, not towards the new companies. So I agree with you. Here we could do a lot.
Yeah.
And I think we should maybe write a report to the European Commission and say, look, here are some things you have to think about when you distribute this kind of funding.
Which is hopefully the intention, which is not hopefully, this is the intention of this initiative, changing finance and financing change of the Finance Hub in the Club of Rome. So thank you so much. I know you're short on time for today, so I really appreciate your contributions here.
I'm in fact going to participate in a seminar on how to use biomass more intelligently in the future, and the concept of biorefineries. And that is a critical issue, because if you look at each and every sector in society, there is this thinking that you can replace fossil-based materials and products with forest-based materials. And some of that is very positive. But if that demand is too high, you will ruin the forests, you will reduce the forest sink of carbon. So you have to strike a good balance. And it's a fascinating topic. And a lot of innovation is going on, but we need a policy framework that balances all these different interests, where biodiversity is one of them.
Yes, and I've been an investor in biofuels for a long time, and this is a very complex issue. And as you know, I've been investor in load balancing and smart grid development in Germany after the Energiewende announcement of the German Chancellor. So this is a long conversation, but the system does not support startups like us in doing this at this. So yeah. So this is the beginning of a long road. One last advice that you would like to give us before we close?
Well, I think that since this is about finance, I think there are a few very critical issues, given that we have already discussed the macroeconomic framework. And one is how money is created. The second is with whose money are you a risk taker? The ratio. I remember I read this book, The Banker's New Clothes, after the financial crisis in 2012 or 2013. It really opened my eyes when I could see that only a couple of percentage of the money that was being offered was really the bank's own money. The rest was just risk taking. And when that happens, debts build up, and then you come to the government when you are in a problem situation. So you privatize the profits and you socialize the losses. I think it's an absurd situation. So there something has to happen. Thirdly, we need to make sure that long-term investments to build up an infrastructure that is regenerative really have sufficient resources. And here, of course, the financial sector and the private financial finance has a major role to play. Finally, I think you have to cut the link between pure speculative capital and retail banking, because these are too mixed now, and that's very, very risky. So those are a few ideas.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. We'll be in touch, and this is just the beginning of a wonderful financial Club of Rome Financial Hub high-level consultations. Have a wonderful day. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.